Hello, everybody. This is Frankie from Bosque Mobile Bicycle Repair. Today, we're going to be talking about cycling for seniors or cycling for people 50 and older, cycling for people in their old age, cycling for people who are retired. I'm a young guy, and I'm pretty sure most of you are thinking the same thing. Why are you talking about older people cycling? And you have that's a really good question. It's because I have fixed a lot of people's bicycles who are older than me, who are 50 and older. That's like my really good, those are my best customers. Those are the ones who buy from me. Those are the customers that um really value my service and appreciate the mobile repair service for their bicycle. Um, yeah, so I just want to say that, I've seen I've gotten very encouraged by seeing older people cycle and keep a active lifestyle. Being healthy, the persistence, the self-motivation and will of the older customers I have seen. It's a miracle. I've seen people in their 70s, I think even 80s, I've seen people cycle. For sure, 70s. I've seen people cycle in their 70s. Um, being retired is a time for self-care. You have time to take care of yourself. You know, I sometimes I take breaks from work and I just take care of myself. I go outside, I hike, I bike. It's a time for, being active, so there's a lot of so just take care of yourself, you know, invest in yourself, eat healthy, do that. But yeah, like I said, why listen to me? I've seen a lot of older cyclists of all different skill levels, of all different shapes and sizes. So I've seen people lose a lot of weight. I've seen what it can do, the longevity of being active, not just cycling, but I just of cycling and walking and being an active person. There's a lot of YouTubers out there um, that I've been watching, and they're older. Their main topic is cycling, and they're in the older age. Um, and they get a lot of views, because there's a lot of older people out there that want to to get into cycling, or they are in cycling, so they just don't know where to go. The industry isn't really marketed towards educating older consumers, cyclists. So that's why I'm making this. You know, that's why I'm making this because I want there's a there's not a lot of information for older cyclists. And a lot of times they'll go out there and get different opinions from other cyclists, older cyclists. It may not always be the right information they need, and I've seen it all different types of older cyclists, um, seniors that cycle and their different skill levels. So this is why I'm gonna break it down for you into different subjects. Okay, first of all, I'm not a physical therapist, a fitness trainer, or nutritionist. I'm just a person who lives an active lifestyle. Um, you know, I'm, I'm getting older, and you know, I have some unhealthy habits. Unfortunately. Also, I want to disclose that living in America. If, as you can tell by my American accent, North American accent, I'm in the United States of America. Right now, I'm in Denver, Colorado. But the unfortunate reality is America is a very unhealthy place. Americans eat very unhealthy. I am guilty of that. I have an addiction to sugar. I I have an addiction. I like sweets. I like sugar. Um, I stay away from high fructose corn syrup. I avoid it like the plague. I look at the labels, but I still intake sugar, which is bad. It's processed. We have a lot of processed food. We're in the we're in the political process of banning a lot of stuff. A lot of our food is banned in other countries. Um, but yeah. So I mean, I'm in business to make money, but it's also a benefit is seeing people, change their lives, you know, through cycling. So I've seen people that I could tell they lost weight because all their clothes are loose and their skin is loose, and I'm like, and their gears are all grinded up. You know what I mean? It's all worn. You'll wear the gears out on your bicycle a lot faster if you're a heavier person. And I'll ask them. I'll be like, "Did you lose a lot of weight?" And they'll go, "Yes, I did." And I said, "I can tell." And looking at your bike, just by looking at a bike, I can tell if somebody lost a lot of weight. But anyways, I want to encourage you to get on a healthy path. Cycling is a great cardio and exercise, but I don't just recommend cycling for your exercise and weight loss. I recommend, know your limits, of course, but, walking, lifting weights, not just, don't have cycling as just the only form of exercise that you do. I have done that before, I've had like strong legs and abdominals, and my arms weren't that strong. But you want to be even. You want to work out all the muscles. Cycling does work out a lot of muscles, but you don't want to just have that as your only form of exercise. And also, changing your diet is part of being healthy. I'm guilty of exercising and not changing my diet. So I was still a little bit overweight, even though I was constantly cycling. I was cycled every day, or I did push-ups, I did some weightlifting. Um, but yeah, know your limits. Always speak with your doctor, and consult with your primary care physician. Um, but yeah, I had a neighbor um, who was 80 years old. I think she was 85 actually. Um, but she walked every day. She walked every day and she tended to her garden. She stayed active. Was in, she would go to church or stay active at her church. And she was a good friend. And she is healthier than most. She was 80, 85, and she's healthier than a lot of 50-year-olds that I've met. It's being active. And there was another neighbor who she was, I think she was 60 or 50, and she was, you know, overweight, didn't go out that much, and she even said that my friend was very, the reason why she lives so long is because she's very active. Um, but yeah, know your limits. You know, this is a good lifestyle. Um, Stay safe. Be safe. Um, I'm gonna say that. there's a lot of older people getting into e-bikes, and I repair them, because the customer wants it done. I'm gonna fix it, but I don't, I'm gonna get more into this at the end of the podcast, so you could skip to it. But I don't recommend e-bikes for seniors or older people, and unless they're very light and they don't go that fast. But I just don't like the idea of seniors on e-bikes. I see it all the time, and I've actually talked to some that have got injured on the e-bikes. Unless you're maybe an experienced, really experienced cyclist, when you were young and you've been growing up cycling, and maybe then get an e-bike. But it's basically a lot of these e-bikes being sold in America. We don't really have any regulations like the EU or the in Europe. So most of the e-bikes being sold here in America are mopeds. They're basically motorcycles, in my opinion. And I work on them. I fix them. These things go fast. They're heavy. But anyways, um, be safe. I don't recommend older people ride on the roads. Unfortunately, here in America, it's not a very pedestrian friendly environment, nor is it friendly for cycling. So I do recommend riding on trails or designated paths for bicycles and hikers. Um, do you know just do I would recommend staying on just trails. Um, I've seen my friend Frankie or Frank, his name's Frank, sorry. Frank, he's an older gentleman, veteran. He has a road bike. He's a road cyclist. He could ride fast. This guy, no, he probably can ride faster than me. But he not only rides on the trails, but he rides on the road. And he got struck by a car and got hurt. So he stopped cycling for a while, but he got back on the bike. But I think he just sticks on the trails now, unfortunately. But yeah, I've seen a lot of older cyclists, met a lot of older ones. I mean, there's guys in their 50s who can outride me, you know, and they they ride every day. That's what they do, 'cause that's their drug of choice is cycling. It's a healthy drug. But yeah, I think it's kind of like a jogger's high. I jog too. I jog. It's kind of like, you get a little high, natural high, cycling. Um, but yeah, I've seen a lot of people, just, they want to get into it. They don't know where to go. But some people very persistent, very serious riders. Um, but cycling is about peace, in my opinion. For me, it's peace and solitude. I can go out and ride on the trail and just, be away from all the electronics and you know, just kind of get away from my problems and just have fun, be out in the sun and the elements, of course, dress appropriately, bring, water and your little toolkit, pump. But I enjoy myself. I do like to, I'm more of a solitude rider, and there's nothing wrong with and I am social person, but for cycling, I'm mainly a solo rider. But that's the cool thing about cycling is you can cycle by yourself or you can go cycle with a group. So, but yeah, it's 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 yeah, there's no worries, Hakuna Matata means no worries. But yeah, don't get don't be s- don't I recommend don't get caught up in the consumerism of cycling. You're older, don't spend all your money on it, unless you have the money, then go ahead, by all means, enjoy it. There's some very older, wealthy individuals that they have enough money to spend, they know they're not going to be around that long, so they're going to spend it on the bicycles and stuff. So if you got the money, go ahead. But a lot of times when you go to these bike shops, it's all, they're just trying to upsell you. They're retail stores, so they're just trying to sell you a bunch of stuff. And I wouldn't get caught up in the consumerism. I love just riding, I don't really care what people think about my bike or if I have the coolest new gear. You know, there's a lot of group rides, and you gotta distinguish which one's right for you. There's a lot of the group rides that most people who are not cyclists that know about are like the elite group rides, the ones where the guys are all lycraed out, the tights and the road bikes and they got clip-in pedals, they got, you know, the hottest, newest gear, you know, they're worried about their social status and how they are perceived by others in their group. If that's what you like, by all means, go for it. Um, you know, I just say, that's not me, but there's a lot of different types of groups. Some groups are are have different skill levels are for, focused on individuals who are older, but even, just wanted to do a recreational ride, a leisure ride, or just but yeah, but the thing about group rides is you always meet somebody in those groups who you know connect with, you're friends with. So that's why I used to go to the group rides, is like I'd meet friends and then we would end up riding together without that group, so because maybe the group wasn't that great, but we met, we kind of we're on the same pace level, so we had fun. But I'm just happy to see cyclists and just on the road. I'm just happy to see cyclists no matter, what group they're in or what bicycle they have. Um, just be courteous and respectful to all cyclists, and respect pedestrians and other people on the trails. Um, that's what I think all cyclists should abide by, is just respect and being peaceful. I'm going to let me check this recorder real quick. Sorry about that. And it's still recording. Okay. Okay. We're going to talk about the ABCs of cycling. Always be comfortable. And hold on 1 minute. I'm going to turn something off. But always be comfortable. Always be comfortable when riding. Try to, we're going to talk about road bike versus recreational bike. Sometimes I've been sitting all day at the computer, or maybe I'm not in a good posture, so my back is a little achy. I don't want to jump on a road bike. You know, a road bike is not a comfortable position. You can get a simple bike fit. You can give yourself a simple bike fit, or you can get a professional bike fit for all bicycles. If you get a bike fit for a road bike, no matter what, it's still going to be uncomfortable after a long ride. You know, um, stop, take a break. If you start feeling uncomfortable, achy, you don't want to be in pain all day for the next day or for the rest of the day. I don't really recommend road bikes for seniors or older people. this is a real big common mistake because somebody will go out. I'll see somebody older will go out and buy a road bike, go buy clip-ins, and they will get rid of that bike. They don't. They're like, this is a young man's game. You know, I don't want to do this. This is uncomfortable. Then they go buy a recreational bicycle, which is more like a step-through bike, or maybe a bicycle with a more relaxed position. Um, I've seen it all the time. I've seen people would buy brand new road bikes, practically brand new road bikes from an older gentleman on Facebook Marketplace or OfferUp or some other type of third party seller or garage sale. So yeah, just you know, take that into consideration. Then again, there's like I've seen a guy in his 70s riding a road bicycle. Like that's all they ride is road bicycles. They when they get off it, they look like a hunchback. I shouldn't say that, but they kind of do have a little walk to them, but not all of them. But it's that's like a no pain, no gain type of cycling. And if you want to be that, then be it. But I don't recommend it. There's older gentlemen that's all they ride is road bicycles. Like I said, there's different skill levels or people personalities and what their comfort level is in cycling. Just because they do it doesn't mean you have to do it that way. And don't let a bike shop pressure you into buying something that you're not comfortable with. If you're a beginner cyclist, don't go out and spend a lot of money. Buy a $500 bicycle, a decent bicycle. We can get a decent bicycle, or if it's cheaper than that, then spend some money in new tires, on puncture resistant tires. Um, so yeah, like I said, step through bicycles are being very popular even with males today. It's not just a girl's bicycle anymore. Pe- me, uh, Gentlemen's bicycles also are step through, which they're more comfortable, they're more easier to get onto. Um, More bicycles with the more upright position are being sold a lot. Um, I just whatever makes you comfortable, whatever's going to get you on the bike, whatever's going to get you to ride longer, that's what I recommend. Don't want to hurt yourself. You don't want to, do that. So if you're an older person, now we're going to get into recumbent bicycles and tricycles versus tricycles. Um, so I know a lot of you are like, I don't want to fall. I don't want to fall on the ground. I don't want to get hurt. What about a recumbent bicycle or a tricycle? Okay, the thing with recumbent bicycles is they are extremely expensive. They're for maintenance, well, just to buy them and maintenance. I charge a lot because I got to get on the ground. I put them on jack stands and then I got to tune them up. I got to work harder to fix them. The most expensive bicycle that I've ever worked on was a recumbent bicycle. It was an electronic recumbent bicycle. It had a Shimano motor, and it was just over $10,000. That's four zeros. 10000. $10,000. It was that much. They don't all cost that much, but you're looking at spending in the thousands, in a couple of thousands for a recumbent bicycle. The gentleman that I repaired it for, he was a wealthy individual, and he actually bought it used. He actually lived in New Mexico, and he drove all the way up to Colorado to buy it. He bought it used. I think of course, he spent like at least over $5,000 for that bike. I forgot how much. I don't know if I asked him how much he paid for it, but he was more than willing to ride it. They did have trouble getting it in the vehicle because it was, because it's a recumbent. But his wife is younger. She was like 60 or she was like 50. So she helped him out most of the time. But yeah, so yeah, recumbents are good. They're if you got the money, you know. If you got a recumbent though, make sure you buy like Schwab Marathon Plus tires or some puncture resistant tires. I have a video on YouTube. I got a document on my website recommending um, puncture resistant tires. You know, it's the document that says top 10 reasons why cyclists get flats. I actually list that, I think, in the number 2 reason. But yeah, recumbents, because if you're getting flat on a recumbent, it's going to be extremely difficult to fix, if you're not a mechanic. Well, not that difficult, but if it's the front wheels, depend, not that much, but the rear one, yeah. Um, so, invest in your maintenance and everything. It's just, and make sure if you buy a bike, you can transport it if you're using a vehicle. Make sure you got a rack and you can lift it. Like I said, the only reason he was able to transport that trike or that recumbent was because of his younger wife. Um, tricycles, tricycles. We're gonna talk about that. Don't go cheap on a tricycle. Don't buy a cheap one off of Amazon. I see it all the time, and I fix them all the time. It's a never ending story. Spend the money. Spend the money. I don't like recommending bikes, but this is like the only bike that brand that I've recommended because they just make a quality tricycle, and it's a good trike. It's a good tricycle. It's worth the money. Um, I've ridden them. I've seen them in industrial facilities, manufacturing and warehouse environments. They're made out of steel. They are heavy. You're not going to transport it in a car. Um, but they're durable. It's called they're made they've been a it's the old one of the oldest it is the oldest bicycle manufacturer in America. They've been around for over 100 years. It's called Worksman Cycles, and they make awesome tricycles. Like I'm trying to save up for one. I want to they make a cargo tricycle, and I want to make it into like a tool. They can put a toolbox on it, and I wanted to make it like my mobile little repair business. It's really cool, really really cool. Um, yeah, their cheapest one I think is like $400, 500. Maybe it's cheaper than that. I don't know. I could look it up right now. Let me see. It's their folding trike, Worksman folding trike. Let me see. Worksman folding tricycle. There you go. That one I actually want to buy just to test it out. And but yeah, they're in the East Coast over there. I think they're like in North Virginia or something like that. Yeah, it's a $409 and then plus shipping. But yeah, that's gonna last you a long time. That's gonna last you a long time. A tricycle, yeah, don't go cheap on it. I've seen electric ones. Like I said, I don't really recommend electric bikes. Um, if you're like really older, I was just watching a video on YouTube where there was a assisted living facility or a senior home, and they did have the recumbent trikes there, but they also had and Worksman Cycles actually makes these. They make them for I forget what they call them. They call them it's for people who you know they're they're limited in their abilities. They are they're almost like for kids. They're like kind of like kids, but of course for an adult size. And it's a way for them, people to get exercise. Which is yeah, it's let me see, bikes for specialty adaptive cycles. There you go. That's the word I was thinking about. Adaptive cycles. Get into that. Those, if you look at that word, search it, adaptive cycles, you will see yeah, bicycles that, for people with some issues. Even, maybe you know, they're okay. Um, fully mentally able, but they're just very, the body's damaged. Um, but yeah, it's really good. At least there's something out there for everybody. There's not That's the cool thing about cycling. It's just there's something out there for everybody to enjoy and get outside and have some recreation. Some fun. Okay, so that's my spiel on the that's the topic for the topic on recumbents and tricycles. Let me see. Oh yeah, choosing a mechanic. Oh yeah, choosing a mechanic. Um, I'll tell you a story. There was a guy, this was an older gentleman who he actually had an e-bike, but this was not a cheap e-bike. This was a real expensive e-bike, and it was light. Usually e-bikes are heavy. This one was light. It was a pedal assist. It didn't have a throttle. I don't know how fast it went. I think it didn't go that fast, but I think it went like 20 miles an hour, maybe 15. Um, but this guy hired me. He lived all the way in Castle Rock, Colorado, and there was bike shops near him, but he hired me to go all the way to his house and switch out some tires and check his bike. Um, Unfortunately, I think he had a bad experience with the bike shop. He wasn't a bad guy. He was actually very polite. Um, you know, there's some customers who are rude, but no, he was a gentleman, he was nice. I had told him, I said, "Hey, I need to focus," and he went inside because he was talking a lot. But unfortunately, there's a lot of age discrimination in bike shops. There's also gender discrimination. There's unfortunately a lot of things in this industry. That's why a lot of people used to come to me and have me fix their bikes. Because I did not care what age somebody was. I would, or who they were, their gender. A lot of older women when I was in Albuquerque. That was like my number one customer base was older women. Um, but unfortunately, there's shops where, yeah, if you bring like a recreational bicycle and you're an older guy, they're not going to want to work on your bike because they only work on maybe high-end road bikes or high-end mountain bikes, or they don't want to do a repair. They'd rather sell you a new bike. But unfortunately, that is an issue. So, talk word of mouth, talk to some older cyclists and see who's out there, who's a good mechanic. Doing some repairs on your bicycle, maybe learning some mechanics. A lot of the top YouTubers on mechanic YouTubers, they're older guys. What was that one guy? What's his name? Forgot that guy's name right now. But there's some older YouTubers that they do mechanics. But if you don't want to do it, find somebody. But know your limits. No, I don't recommend advanced repairs because you might hurt yourself. When you're older, be careful. Make sure it's safe. Try to find a good mechanic out there. If you live in a small city, it can be difficult. There's not a lot of uh, m- bike shops out there, but hopefully, you know, you find one. Um, but yeah, don't hurt yourself. Make sure the bike's safe. Um, but yeah, we're going on to the next subject, puncture protection. So you don't have to repair your bicycle on the trail. If you've ever had to repair a bicycle out in the field or on the trail, like you break down, it's not easy. I see people struggling all the time, even young people, even so-called experienced cyclists, they're struggling. Um, I'm a professional. I'll fix that bike, but this is why it's good for you to invest in quality puncture resistant tires. And I have YouTube videos, I have videos on my social media, I have a document on my website talking about how to prevent flats, top 10 reasons why cyclists get flats, what products I recommend to buy. So you don't have to repair your bicycle on the trail. You don't have to be stranded. You don't have to call somebody to pick you up. You can enjoy your ride. Okay. And if you do get a puncture, it's going to be a slow leak and you're going to be able to get home. And you're going to be able to wake up maybe in the morning and look at your bike and be like, oh, it's flat. Okay. So at least you're home, safe, and you can work on it, call a mobile mechanic to come repair it. Okay. So invest in that puncture resistance, um, bring a pump, bring a bring a good size pump. Don't buy those little tiny ones. Don't buy a CO2 cartridge. Buy I like Topeak's long kind of pump, and they also sell like electric pumps now. Um, the thing is, you gotta make sure it's charged before you go out on the ride. So check your tire pressure before you go out on a ride. But now if you get an electric pump, not only do you gotta check your tire pressure, you also gotta check your batteries charged. And also check if you got a bicycle lights, make sure they're charged too. So just in case you get caught out and it's getting dark, which you shouldn't be, but make sure you have your lights charged. But I just recommend a pump, a good pump, um, something you can, something safe. If you got room, if you got a bike rack, you can get a little pannier and put your pump in there. Okay, now we're gonna talk into the controversial subject. E-bikes for older people. I don't like this. Okay, like I said, most of the e-bikes being sold in America are like they're mopeds. Even it says moped on the tires. Their tires are rated for moped. Um, on the bike, they got a throttle. They go fast. They go 20 miles an hour. Um, One of the most popular types of e-bikes being sold are what they call fat bike tire e-bikes. So they're e-bikes with very big tires, knobby tires. They're originally designed to ride on sand or snow, but they do great in off-roading. Um, People are getting hurt. People, a lot of older people are getting hurt. There was a guy in Albuquerque. He crashed on his bike. Um, a lady had called the ambulance for him. It was an e-bike. She held it for him. He didn't even come back for that bike or try to find that bike because probably he didn't want it. Um, I know personally people who have got fell on those bikes, um, and somebody who was close to a family member of mine's had bought one, an older gentleman, and they had told me, and I said that's not a good idea, and I said he can get hurt, and then it turned out the guy ended up crashing. He slipped. He was turning and he slipped on some sand on the gravel and on, I guess, on concrete, and he fell and got stitches on his head. So, and those bikes are heavy, so if that thing falls on your leg, it's gonna damage you. I've seen older people fall on regular bicycles, so and get hurt, but they weren't going that fast. You know, so take into account. Unfortunately, I have to talk about this. Falling. That's why it's good to if you're scared about falling, um, get yourself a recumbent bicycle or a tricycle. So that's an option. Wear a helmet, wear your gloves, wear protective gear, long sleeves, so if you fall, you don't get road rash all over your arms and stuff. Um, but yeah, e-bikes, they're not good. The cool thing about regular bikes is if you're not strong enough to go that fast, as you're probably not strong enough to get hurt going that fast. So it's kind of like your own regulation. So with the e-bike, you know, if you're just going 25 miles an hour and, they're dangerous. A lot of people are getting hurt like crazy. Just not older people, and not just older people, but people in general. And we don't, like I said, some cities are pulling out their own regulation, but as far as federal or state, there's not really any regulations. I think in California, the Forest Service banned them on trails. Um, like I said, these things are just motorcycles. They're just mopeds, in my opinion. Um, but if you're gonna ride an e-bike and you want to do it, by by all means, go. That's your choice. That's what you want to do. But just be safe. That's all I gotta say. They're heavy. If like I said, they make some that are light and they don't go that fast, but those ones are usually very expensive. Um, One of the biggest YouTubers for e-bikes, and he's a senior. I watch his channel. His name is Russ is Right. He's fell, I think, twice he's talked about. And I watched his videos because he reviews e-bikes and he does have an older crowd, but he's even had a video that was dedicated to falling and talking about falling. And people in the comments were like, yeah, I'm older and I was gonna get an e-bike, but now I'm not, because I did think about it. So, you know, some older people are very tough and stronger, and they can fall and get right back up. I've seen it, but some are not. Just depends on how your body, your health, um, what is your limitations. So yeah, I don't like it, but a lot of older people were buying e-bikes. It was a big, big trend. It still is a big trend. And like I said, these things are heavy. Are you gonna ride from your house? If you live near a trail, are you gonna ride from your house to the trail? If you're gonna transport that thing by your car, are you strong enough to pick it up and move it? That's why a lot of people hire me because I go to the house. I complete the repairs on site. I don't take your bike. I don't, you could stay at home and fixing it in the driveway. So that's why a lot of people, that's why I, I know uh, I see this. I see this a lot because this is my customer base. These are the reasons why they buy from me, buy my service. So that's what I have to say about e-bikes, But, be safe, wear a helmet, have lights, have water, have a pump, know how to do a little bit of maintenance, basic maintenance. I have videos on my social media. I'm on 15 different social media platforms. I'm on YouTube, Odyssey, Rumble, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, um, Blue Sky, Twitter, or I have my own website, www.bosquemobilebicyclerepair.com. My Bosque means forest in Spanish. You can look it up, Google it, you know, that way you know how to spell it and then search it. But yeah, just be safe out there. Um, I'm happy to see older people out there staying in shape, being healthy. They inspire me. They, encourage me to not be lazy because I'm like, there's no excuse for me to be overweight and be, um, a couch potato or be lazy or if they're out there riding, then I need to get out there and ride. So, I just encourage everybody to go out there and cycle, enjoy it, have fun, you know, invest in yourself, invest the time, and have fun, and have fun. Be there for your grandkids and be there for your friends. Um, yeah, man, cycling is the key to youth. It is the secret fountain of youth. I've seen some very strong individuals, very tough and people, and they've ridden bikes. Some of them have ridden bikes their whole life. Some of them had just started, and they were persistent in it. So I've had a lot of when I used to live in Albuquerque, I had repeat customers once a year. A lot of some older, a lot of most, like I said, mostly older people. So yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy. Thank you for listening, taking the time to listen to this podcast. Um, Subscribe, hit the like button, and check out, like I said, check out my website, my social media, my videos. Um, I just want you to be a more educated consumer, and and most of all, be safe and enjoy the ride. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.